Drew Thomas Hendricks here. I'm the host of the Legends Behind the Craft podcast. On this show, I talk with leaders in the wine and craft beverage industry. Before we get started, brief sponsor message. Today's episode, sponsored by Barrels Ahead. You know, at Barrels Ahead, we help the wine and craft industry scale their business through authentic content. Go to barrelsahead.com today to learn more. Bianca Harmon's joining us today. She's our channel director for the podcast. How's it going, Bianca?
Going great. Super stoked for this conversation today.
Yes, today we're talking with Dr. Henry Barham. Now, I met Henry at the North Coast Wine Expo back in December, where he's the founder of VinoTastr. And at the time, I just had to learn more about it. So I'm super stoked to have him on the show today. Welcome to the show, Henry.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about today. So thank you all.
So Henry, you're a ENT, ear, nose, and throat physician by, I guess, by profession,
Yeah.
and an innovator by night. Talk to me about, let's just jump into the technology behind VinoTastr and your motivation for creating this product.
So basically, a little bit of a background, and I hope it makes sense. But basically, yes, I do ENT or ear, nose, and throat. And then I did a fellowship in rhinology. And so nobody really knows what that is, but it's a fellowship out of ENT. And so I do just nose, sinus, skull-based things. So like sinus disease, taste and smell issues, nasal airway, pituitary tumors, things like that. So, while I have my practice, also have been really interested and continue to have done research beyond medical school and then residency and fellowship. And so one of the things that we study in our lab is taste and smell. It obviously sort of goes along with the nose quite nicely. And there's this basically group of receptors or family of receptors that influences taste that we have studied, for the last decade or so, more on the lines of like immunity and things like that as it relates to like sinusitis or bacterial infections or inflammatory disorders. And then looking at them, like obviously everyone got interested in taste and smell as it relates to COVID or this virus. Now sort of changed our world for the last couple of years, but, especially with the loss of taste and smell. But basically, we have a company that deals in the science of taste and smell specifically. And then, but more related to like immunity, as we had talked about. But sort of one of the offshoot projects has turned
and that's Phenomune?
Yes. And so you got it. So that's more of like the medical company that I help with from a research standpoint from like immunity, and they have immunity products, so, sprays and tests and things like that. But this offshoot deal has been sort of the TASTR project. And so, it's TASTR, which, the reason that's important is the family of receptors that we've studied is like TAS-T1R, TAS-2R. And so they're receptors, bitter receptors. And so we've basically started TASTR. And I will say this project has been just so fascinating because, personally, from a scientific standpoint, the immunity stuff with these receptors is interesting. The wine project has been fascinating, and it's sort of spun, into other projects. And so wine's kind of the first that we started studying, but we're now doing it to other projects like, spirits, beer, coffee, terpenes, and marijuana and products like that. But sort of wine was the first intro to it, and has honestly been fascinating and just a lot of fun. If you can imagine, for somebody who does science research, the opportunity to work on a wine project has sort of opened a whole world that, I think everybody finds interesting. Myself, like wine. I think everybody, likes the idea of the social aspect of wine, but the science behind it has been really fascinating. So that's basically that wasn't very much of a short answer, so I apologize, but that's sort of the background.
What led you into the wine side of it?
Yeah, great question. So basically, in short, what we're studying specifically is, so these receptors live throughout your airway, right? And so we had studied them to immunity, but on your tongue, they heavily influence taste. Okay. So like on a taste bud, you have, numerous of these receptors, and you have taste buds throughout your tongue, and you have sort of receptors to all the cardinal taste or 5 primary taste on each of the taste buds. And basically what we're doing is we're measuring the perception of specific tastes through this test. And so basically what we did was, the idea was like, apart from immunity, could you test one's expression of these receptors, and how much does that influence taste? Because this is something that's been looked at for like years, dating back to like, you hear these stories of like chemistry projects where people would just use like PTC and they're like, oh, you don't like broccoli, or like, you must be a super taster. The idea has been there for a while. And so basically what we have done is, because I'll be the first to tell you, I'm not a wine expert. None of us claim to be. I find the science fascinating, but what we are is the science of taste. And so what we've done is basically our test is measuring one's expression of bitter taste receptors relative to sweet receptors, and then also your perception of umami and sour. Those are kind of the primary components. And then you look at the components of wine, and, from an outsider, it's like, I like wine. You go to a wedding or you go to dinner, and it's like the social aspect of wine is great, but it's like anything. Once you get into it, you kind of really dive into it. Well, wine can be intimidating because there's like 56 million different types of wine, or, it's like, where do you start? I think I like red. I think I like white. I'm told that if I go like to dinner and eat like a steak, I should like a Cabernet, but maybe basically what we've done is like take wines, try to figure out the primary components that stimulate these receptors. And then after doing that, then you measure which specific receptors. So it's kind of gone more in depth than like, so for instance, I referenced the broccoli thing. So that one historically is like T2R38. So that's kind of the most well-known studied one, even from a genetic standpoint. But there's actually like 25 of the different bitter taste receptors in that T2R family. And then sweet receptors, you have numerous of those also. And so like, it's a little more complicated than just T2R38. But basically what we've done is figured out like what components of wine stimulate which of these receptors on your tongue. And then so you measure the end receptor, and then using people like y'all or experts in the wine industry to basically try to marry the two together. And so like, while we are not a wine company, we are measuring the end user. So like the person drinking, literally the proteins on people's tongue, and then match wines to that. And then sort of the aha moment, or where it's been fascinating, is like myself, you have people who I think want to like wine and want to be able to talk the talk, but it's kind of intimidating, right? And so like, you may not have $100 to, go find, I don't even know a sommelier, but like you ask for their recommendations. And so that's where this has been really fun, because it's like, you can do a test and
about the test for a second.
Yeah. So it's literally
from our users,
but it's literally showing exactly what is like tailored for them, which has been fascinating.
From our standpoint. So just for our listeners, so we met you and your team at WinExpo. I was with my wife and Bianca. We were touring the show, and you guys had these little packets that seemed almost like litmus strips that you'd put on your tongue. And depending on how you react on it, you would rate the level of how much you can identify it on like a scale. And it was so dramatic. I remember one of these strips, I could barely taste it. Bianca put the same strip in her mouth, and it was a dramatic expression on her face. So wild. And we were tasting we had the exact same strip in our mouth at the same time. That was the aha moment. We're like, holy moly, you've identified that exact thing. And then once we did the little survey or whatever after the strips, you've identified 4 or 5 different types of tasters.
We probably will, with this iteration of the test, it probably gets more specific as we go. And we have tested a large number at this point, but obviously from a research standpoint, I love data. And so that's kind of the goal as it goes. Once you get, exceptionally large numbers, then you kind of have more power in refining it even further. But I will say, like, it's pretty specific even now, just on, admittedly, we have tested a lot of people at this point, but the team has done a great job, and honestly, help with people in y'all's industry has really helped us to to figure out like how to marry the wines together. Cause that's, as I said, that's something that we didn't necessarily know.
I love it. We've, there's been so many iterations of this sort of example over the years, but most of it's just asking someone, do they like light coffee or dark coffee? Do they like sugar in their coffee or whatnot? And so you're basically basing your recommendation on what they say, whereas this is actually experiential. And after the litmus strip, or I'm using the wrong word, after these strips that were put
you nailed it. Yeah.
in my mouth, I was classified a balance ambassador, which I have to say, pretty spot on with the way I consume and enjoy wine. And in contrast, I know Bianca can't remember exactly which one it was, but it resonated with you, didn't it, Bianca?
Yeah, no, it was really good. It was pretty much all the things I like to drink, except for, I don't know what I did with my card. I was just telling Drew, I was like, I wish it emailed me my results.
The new version does.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a constant evolution, as you can imagine. And honestly, when we went out there, or when we first met y'all, that was like so nerve-wracking for us, as a company, because like we're not in this world. We had have done a bunch of these like events where we did blind testing and blind tasting and like tested people, and then like had them blinded to what they were drinking, and they had to rank them. And that's kind of how we got our foot in the door. But, for us, we felt like, we're going into the belly of the beast because this is wine country and these people know. And it was really fun. So that's what's been pretty fascinating through this whole process.
What was the general industry feedback from the event?
It was really good. It's interesting because it's like you said, we don't have all the answers yet. And certainly, I think that'll take time. And that's the fun process. But I think, most people get it. It just makes sense that it's like, you go with a couple or with your significant other, and it's like, you go to dinner, you buy a bottle of wine, or, you're both supposed to enjoy it. But inevitably it's like, yeah, I kind of like it. And then, the other one's like, this is great. And that's what's tough is like, it's, people are different. And that's exactly, what we're measuring is like, measuring each specific person and then matching for them. And so that's the industry, from the feedback we've gotten has been really good because like you said, it has been pretty spot on, mainly because, like I said, from help from people like y'all, helping us to curate like what matches with what. But we continue to test, and it's been fun.
What is your goal with it then, Henry? I mean, are you trying to get in with wineries?
Yeah. Great question. And I think that answer probably changes daily. I think in December, if you would have asked us, our plan was to go direct to public and just, kind of push it out there, whether it be social media or whatever. People could just order it and do it at home. And I think that's still an option, though admittedly, we have met with several wineries, distributors, and are trying to sort of let them help guide us in the way that they see it. Because I think, the needs of the industry, that's been really interesting of like trying to follow what has happened. So I didn't realize before all of this that the wine industry is evidently sort of contracting and that the younger population doesn't necessarily drink wine on the way that, people historically have. And
we're doing our best to change that.
Yeah, for sure. As certain people are certainly carrying their weight, but a contraction as a whole. And so I think, taking the advice of players in the industry, whether it be, we're not opposed to big or small. I think, everybody has been helpful. And so I think working with, wineries in terms of like their mailing list or their clubs, where they would use it to, kind of help, hey, try this new product that we have, and then tailor shipments to those people. So that's where it's like a home run, as opposed to just saying like, hey, here's a new wine we want you to try. Well, obviously not everybody's going to like it, but what if you could measure, the proteins on one's tongue and have a better experience where, what you send them, they are much more likely to like, literally from a scientific standpoint. So that's one angle versus, also distributors, like ways to kind of the novelty of it, as you said, like, you take it in a group, but it's actually pretty fun to like take it with other people, take the test with other people, because you get so many different responses where somebody's like, I taste nothing on this strip. And you get other people who are like, this is literally the worst thing I've ever put in my mouth. And so it's kind of fun, the novelty of it. And so that, I think from a marketing angle of like figuring out what people like, and then being able to offer people, what's specific to them, as opposed to just a generic, like drink wine. I think the beauty of this is it's 2023. And if you could like individualize people, like you did a podcast recently on like the increasing personalization of wine.
Yes.
There's a company that personalizes bottles. Well, this is kind of in that same direction, but from a different angle. That, I mean, it truly is personalized for their specific taste. And then you can match the wine to that. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer and great for me because I love the science behind it, but also it makes sense from a real world.
I see the ideal use case, or one use case, which is pretty ideal, is there's so many wine
subscriptions
subscription, and they're set apart from wineries where the person that runs the club goes and sources wines all about. And usually the way those wines start, whether it is they ask them a survey, what type of wines you like, it'd be a great kickoff where the VinoTastr is, they inquire that they want to join this subscription. You send them the VinoTastr tasting kit, and that helps them classify and segment which club they should belong to.
Yeah.
And then the club, so they could be in the Balance Ambassador Club or whatever. And that serves as like a perfect starting point that they can then refine the club afterwards.
Well, yeah. One thing we've looked at is even like gamification of it, where it's like exactly what you're talking about, whether it be on like a social media platform. Obviously, now the new iteration, there's an app that goes with it. It's like you take the test, you're on an app, it tells you what group you are. But what if you could pair the groups together almost in like social clubs, and then you have this group making recommendations or a person in this group making recommendations to the rest of the group that, they should like because scientifically they're in the same group. And so there's a lot of...
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so many ways you could go with this, even just in tasting rooms, having it be something that they before they even start their tasting, they do one of these tests. They input their information, do these tests. I mean, as a group, so many bachelorette parties and all of this, sit down and like include that in their wine tasting.
Yeah. So I think we're open to all of it is sort of the short answer.
The amount of ideas are out there. It's amazing. You mentioned that you were started with wine and you're kind of looking and kind of seeing how would this be? What would you have to alter to go into spirits or some other type of?
Yeah. So it's subtle. Like the test, I would say look and feel is very similar, but basically the way it works is you sort of start by taking, so say for instance, like coffee is an easy one to describe because coffee is the one that Bianca had mentioned that everybody says like, oh, do you like broccoli? Do you like black coffee? All this. But so you figure out which of these receptors are stimulated by the specific components of the beverage or food or whatever it is. And then you just tailor the test. So with the strips that you're talking about are basically they're litmus paper strips, but they're coated in chemical agonists for the specific receptors. So basically like with wine, you take the components of wine, you figure out which of the T2Rs they are directly stimulating, which of the T1Rs they're directly stimulating, and then you use known agonists or stimulants of those receptors on the test. So then it kind of brings to light their level of expression or basically their phenotypic expression, the amount that they're expressing of these receptors that are important for the components of that beverage. And so like if you move forward to craft, drinks like you're talking about, you just basically take the specific drink or the alcohol and then which of these receptors it stimulates. And then you just alter the test or the chemicals that stimulate to sort of bring out what their expression is on those specific ones. And then the two tie together. And that's kind of the background of sort of how it works, because it's interesting because I talked to a lot of people about this and, there's not really tests out there of taste that can be utilized. And that's different than most of the other neurosensory, like points of perception or detection. And what I mean by that is like, take vision, for instance, like you're wearing a pair of glasses, I have contacts. And so like that world has been explored and there's a lot of augmentation in that world. And what I mean by that is like, perception of vision, whether it be, light or color, you can take 10 people and show them the same thing. So take them to the Grand Canyon. They all look at it and they say, man, that's, I can tell it's colorful, it's deep, it's big, it's impressive. But until each of them put on glasses, you have some people that are nearsighted. You have some people that are farsighted. Until they put on glasses, you don't get that full sensory experience, right? The perception of just how great it all is. But the way you get there is by literally measuring their ability to detect vision. So it's the detection of it, and then you augment it. And that's where they get this full experience. That's sort of what this product is. So we're literally measuring their ability to detect certain products. And then the wine is the glasses, right? In that Grand Canyon analogy. So the wine is what sort of brings out their full experience. Because like what the data would suggest and what I believe is that when people are in an experience together, you mentioned like a bachelorette trip or you go to dinner, the data would suggest that people are all looking for the same experience, but they're coming at it from different angles. So like you have some people that I will say, like nearsighted, farsighted from a vision perspective, but you have some people who have high expression of these bitter receptors. They're actually kind of turned off by bitter products. You have people that have, high expression of T1R, sweet receptors. And so they can really intensely perceive, sugars and sweet products. And so like, if they're all sort of searching for that same experience, this allows you to marry or match the wines for each of them so they get that full experience, whether it be like sitting out by a pool or eating, in the summertime or eating fish, which is very different than like a late night meal where they're having like a big, steak and like a big umami meal. They're all similarly sort of longing for the same thing. And so what this product is doing is literally just detecting their ability to perceive these different tastes. And so that, from a science standpoint, I apologize for getting as excited as I do, but it's fascinating for sure.
Well, I just think of it as like something as I worked in tasting rooms for a very long time. People come up to my bar. I've never tasted wine before, but we really want to taste wine. We really want to do this. And you only get 5 wine samples, right? And so, you start off with the basics, Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Noirs, If they don't like those, then you go to a sweet, because usually you're not going to start with a sweet. Start with a sweet, you completely wash their palate, right? But so at this point now, they didn't like this, they didn't like this, they didn't like this, but they love the sweet. Well, I had 5 sweeter wines I could have given them. And then,
it'd be nice to know that on the front end.
Right. Instead of them using all these tastings up on wines they did not like at all, you could guide them in the direction of what.
It also takes the intimidation out of it. And that's something we've been trying for a long time. The first thing you do when you ask someone, what style of wine you like, you're going to force them to say, I don't know, or force them to divulge some sort of personal information that they have a chance to, with peer pressure. Usually they don't say what they really think. By handing them a litmus strip, by handing this, suddenly all the pressure is off and it just kind of, the ball starts rolling in a non-intimidating way.
And I will tell you, it's funny, you said sweet wines on the one that that your group went to. And an interesting thing that I think we were not expecting in all of this is, there's been a lot, but sweet specifically, historically, if you like sweet wines, I think that like people don't want to admit that because it's like, oh, you like sweet wine. You must not know what you like, cheap wines, or you don't know anything about wine. So go drink your sweet wine. And so I think that people don't want to admit that. And I will say, like, the people that this test says they're in that, they almost feel like freed or vindicated, where it's like, I'm so glad to know this because like, I didn't want to admit that, but now I like have a leg to stand on where I can tell people, like, you know what, I am supposed to like sweet wines because that's literally what my palate, is currently for. And so that's been really interesting, that you have an entire, part of the wine that people wouldn't admit that they like. And now it kind of gives them the freedom to be able to admit that.
Well, and it's very true. I mean, as somebody that did it on I don't really like sweet wines. I like them for a purpose, but they would come up to your bar and be like, oh no, we don't want sweet wines. Then everything they've tried up until that point, they hated. And then they taste the sweet wines and they're like, oh wow, this is fantastic. This is what I like. And it's like, just admit it from the beginning. Right. You say it. It's okay. My job is to help you, but
a lot of people's experience with sweet wines like Mad Dog 2020. So they might not know what a good sweet wine is.
Yeah. It's just fascinating. It's incredible.
No, it's been really fun for sure.
Where are we at with the development? So we talked to you back in December. Bring us up to speed. We're now in middle of February.
Yeah, honestly, you kind of asked the question earlier, and I think we're trying to decide the next move. So it's ready, meaning I think the answer would probably be coming soon, meaning available to public. But I think the real answer is, the test is ready. We have them available to ship. We have large quantities of them. The app is up and running. We've been sort of playing with that to sort of get the kinks out as everything you do has kinks. But it actually,
I saw the app on your website.
I know. It's so weird.
Yeah. That wasn't there in December, was it? There was no app.
No, it was basically, we were just there giving
on
the
iPads.
I tell you what, yeah. No, like the first version of it was, and it was like I don't say poor man's version, but it's like, we had an iPad that had like the internal, built-in questions and stuff, and it did compute it. Now the app is, you can download it on your phone or computer or tablet, whatever your choice is. But yeah, the test can ship to your house, and you can take it at home or wherever, and it does it all for you, and then makes recommendations. And then it's sort of building in the gamification part where it, links from a social aspect. But I think, trying to decide the best way to roll it out, because we're open to everything. And like I said, we, have sort of met and have been discussing with different, vineyards and distributors of the best way to do this, that they could utilize it in addition to us just rolling it out. Because, you all know this industry better than we do. And so, having y'all and, other people's guidance in it is sort of, invaluable to us. So we're sort of pivoting right now to decide kind of what the next move is. Right, but soon to be determined, I think.
And on the website, you talk about partnerships. We have a lot of industry people listening to this. What sort of partnerships are you currently looking for?
So, open to anything, even just people like I'd mentioned earlier, or like, wineries sending it to, them being able to utilize it to send it to their clubs so that they can sell more wine. That's kind of the point, or I think that, the company's tagline is how science sells wine, but from an individual sort of tagline or whatever is like the science behind your sip. And so I think we're open to all of it. So like whether it be vineyards sending to, their clubs so that they can make, more informed or more scientific recommendations to send to their club members, all the way to like large distributors, utilizing it in retail places, basically to sort of garner interest in wine, even, to restaurants, or like sort of from a social aspect, utilizing it there. So I think we're open to all of it, and honestly have met with different people.
That's very good. Now, this is Legends Behind the Craft, and you're the legend. So I need to ask you a couple questions about your innovation. What drives you to innovate?
Yeah, I think the old term of, curiosity killed the cat, but gave a scientist a career. I think, I am fascinated. Not only my practice, obviously, I just practice and know sinus, taste, smell disorders, and so I think that there is the potential here, specifically taste and smell. Number one, it has become so mainstream in the last 3 years with people losing it, that people have interest in it, which is cool. I don't know if cool is the right word, but exciting from the aspect of someone who does research in this. But I think that's sort of the answer is I'm intrigued and very interested in how we can better understand the detection of taste by measuring specific taste receptors, and how we can utilize that to improve people's overall perception of the full experience of taste and smell in everyday life, whether it be wine or beer or spirits or food,
Oh, for sure. And extremely motivated. It's you have 150 publications and book chapters to your credit. That takes dedication. How do you stay motivated through?
Admittedly, like that is, you're always kind of a product of your upbringing. And I also had incredible mentors. So like those, while I have a lot behind my name, obviously that was the bulk of that is other people doing, like having great ideas that I was able to sort of follow through. Or if I had, a few good ideas, a kind of team that has helped me through it all. And so I think curiosity and like that's kind of the biggest deal. And so like I have a great practice and a great lab to be able to, to explore things whenever you have a question, the ability to be able to sort of look into it. That in and of itself kind of drives me to do it because, we have a great team here. I'll say that.
And I always talk, we very rarely get the luxury to talk to somebody at such an early stage of the startup. So usually I'm asking like, what would you have done differently in like 10-year hindsight? But at this early stage of the startup, with you kicking this off, is there anything you would have done differently?
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny. It is so early in the game, but certainly there are things that I would say yes, but more than that, I think our team has been incredibly adaptive at like rolling through sort of all of it. I would say like the transition we still have the medical arm that I work with, that company, but the offshoot of this is like, hey, what if we tried this, when it came to wine? And it's like, now, sure, everyone was really interested because like you have a science company who's like, wait a second, we're about to do research on wine, and Taste is like, yeah, I'm all in. So
heck yeah.
People were pretty excited. And so that was kind of an easy pivot, or I will say like a side project that has gone in conjunction with the others. I would say right now, like, I don't know that something that I'd done differently, but I will say it's an interesting point we're at right now. I wish I had the foresight to know like what the right path is because, while we've looked at going direct to public, or that was our initial plan, it's still like, I think that if you took that avenue, that is very exciting. And that's kind of where we stand of like wanting to get more data, wanting to get people to test it so they can experience it for themselves. But we've been shown recently the importance of working with the industry because y'all and the players in the industry are the ones that know what is actually needed. And so like we're doing that in hopes to not, sort of trip on ourselves just by getting it out there. Cause we could get, the data out there, but then if you don't have anything to go into the industry with, so what? Like people take a test and then great, it says I should like this wine, but maybe I'll remember that next month when I go buy wine, as opposed to like working with industry to where we say like, hey, let's get the test to people so then people have a better experience. It makes it, hopefully more cost effective for them to buy wine, but they also, hopefully better appreciate the wine that they're drinking because it's tailored for them and also helps the industry, so like that you garner interest in this whole thing that, that is kind of the path I think that we're looking to take because it makes the most sense. And I think everybody benefits there, whether it be the consumer who wants to know wine. This is, an easy access to wine and they don't have to spend a couple of years the money in buying it, figuring out what they like, as opposed to, one thing I will say, like, I get asked about this a lot and I want to make a specific point that this is not, or I don't intend for it to be like an advanced level test. Like this is not a master of wine, test. This is for somebody who like wants to know, I want to start liking wine. I want to start drinking wine. This kind of gets your foot in the door. Yeah. It's like, it figures it out. Maybe you cut off half of the wine out there that don't waste your time, on these because it's just not tailored for you. It doesn't mean it's bad wine. Actually, there's groups that are going to love that wine. And it is perfect wine. That's what we're saying is like these vineyards and these distributors have that incredible product. But if it gets in somebody's mouth, that is not ready for it, or they're like, they just sort of collides with literally their receptors, that's not going to go great. So like in a society where people, swipe left, swipe right, like I don't like that. They just kind of dismiss it, out of the gate.
Yeah.
That's not fair to the vineyard. It's also not fair to them that they have to waste their time, and money to get to figure out what they like. And so what we're hoping is this is like, quote, an entry test, but honestly kind of get them right in the middle of it to figure out what they like. And then they can spend the rest of their life really refining specific from there. And then, hopefully it can transition into the other aspects of life in terms of other beverages and foods and stuff. But I will say the wine component or this project has been the most fun from a scientific standpoint. When we were out there with y'all, we had the opportunity to go tour vineyards and seeing like the science behind growing everything from like the rootstock to the grapes and like the weather and how all this factors in. I mean, I grew up in a farm or on a farm in North Louisiana. Obviously not a wine farm, but like, cotton, rice, corn. And so seeing the wine industry and all the science that goes into that is fascinating. And so that was a long-winded answer.
But there was so many golden nuggets in there. I want to draw the viewers back to it because usually I ask that question because hindsight really helps innovators figure out, what they need to do. And you brought up a few key points there that you're right in the midst of it and you were willing to adapt. Started off going direct to consumer, and then you also then moving more to involving the industry. If you're going to enter an industry, you did it right. It's so important to involve the industry right at the outset versus perfecting a product, assuming that they're going to embrace it. Whereas
the fact that you were at Win Expo too was like so surprising to me.
Yeah, I honestly, there again, it's like advisors. Someone recommended, hey, you ought to try this out, and we went knowing not much other than it was just going to be a big event filled with people in the industry, and so it was super exciting.
Have you been to other wine industry? We've just had a series of them in the last couple months.
We didn't go to I guess there was recently one in Sacramento.
Unified, that would have been huge. That's
what everybody said. And okay, so you asked like, where did we stub our toe or what would we have done differently? We've now heard not going to that. But I will say, George Christie has been great. Honestly, we've been able to, send him emails, call him. So he's been, helpful just in terms of like, an introduction to the industry. But no, I mean, we're so new. Yeah, I think our goal is to honestly attend all, sort of all events that we can to. There's actually a total plug for Louisiana, which is where I am, as a food and wine festival in New Orleans, which we are very blessed here to have incredible food. That would be great. But we've talked about, doing setting up and measuring or, testing people at that, saying we're open to all of it in sort of a short answer and work
as you need to be
all levels. Yeah, for sure.
That's fascinating. So Henry, as we're wrapping down, is there anything we haven't talked about that you want to bring up or let the viewers know about?
No, it's up to y'all. I mean,
we've really gone through it. I got to say, you guys got to get onto the site. Where can people find out more about you? I'll let you introduce your domain.
Yeah, in terms of the company, VinoTastr.com, which it's, VinoTastr instead of Taster. Yeah, you got it. There's
I saw my Win Expo card here.
Yes. VinoTastr.com. And that has it's currently, when they first did the first iteration of the site, it was very much direct to consumer as you referenced. And I think it's more tailored towards industry now, which is our current approach until we, maybe we pivot in the future. Maybe we kind of have two arms, but the goal is that we get it directly out to public eventually, whether that, we would love to work with industry to do that, but ultimately it's for the end user. Like it's for them to be able to enter into this world, to be able to figure out what they like, and then to go from there, but obviously we would love for industry to be able to benefit off of it by utilizing it to help their customers. Cause that's what they are. The end user is really the customer of these wineries and distributors. But, we hope to be sort of a middleman between the two, because really for us, it's the science. I mean, that's what it all goes to. And that's what and then the data ultimately, which is another interesting point, is like demographic data has been an interesting point from a scientific standpoint of like how that differs, for different subgroups of the population. And then, moving forward to potentially other products. But for now, we're I keep saying potentially, we've done initial testing on those other, beverages and things, but this one, it's been fun. And I think nobody wants to let it go quite yet. And we want to.
I think you're just at the start of that.
I totally agree. So we're not really chasing the others heavily, quite like we are this one for sure.
And you've got a great slogan: "How science sells wine."
That's what,
right. right to the point.
Yeah.
Well, Henry, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been fascinating, and it was great to catch up, and I can't wait to see where you guys go. We'll have to have you back in a year and see the latest iteration.
Yes.
I'd love to. No, thank you all so much for having me. And if y'all make it down to Louisiana, especially going to dinner at Zorba's, I'd love to have y'all down here.
Yeah. Have you been to the restaurant lately?
Not in probably, over a month.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty recent.
That's pretty recent.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Well, give Antonia lots of love if you see her. She's an incredible person. So
thank you all so much.
Thanks, Henry.
Have a great day. Thank you, Henry. Bye-bye.
You too. Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to the Legends Behind the Craft podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.